Welcome to Let's Talk About the Music. The music is everywhere. I am Shels, your host. What makes this show unique is that our guests choose their own music topics, speaking from rich discussions filled with personal stories and insights. In some of those episodes, we share music industry thought through the eyes of those working within the independent music industry. And remember, Let's Talk About the Music is not just a podcast, it's a multimedia experience. You can actually enjoy as a blog or both audio as Audioboom, Spotify, and Podcaster, or a visual format on YouTube. Just search for official Let's Talk About the Music talk show. So grab your headphones or tune in visually and let's have a musical adventure together on Let's Talk About the Music.com. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11. Now, this is the second episode that we're focusing on women empowerment in the music industry. Okay, this is episode 11. Today, we're going to dive into the world of women sound engineer. I have talked to Ali from Basement Roots Entertainment, Denise, who's a 3-time Grammy award-winning engineer, mixer, Giorgi, who is a award-winning songwriter, producer, and engineer, Jam, who is a mixing master engineer and music producer. Before we jump into this conversation, let's take a moment to explore the history behind this topic that has shaped today's industry. All right, you ready for this? All right, it's a little bit history. Are you sitting down? Okay. Now, the music industry has always been a male-dominant. Sound engineer is no expectations. There's only 7% of professional women in the field of sound engineer. Okay? Now, when I decided to rebrand Let's Talk About the Music, I wanted to make sure I spotlight women in the industry. I'm a single spotlight woman. You know, I run my own business here, so I want to make sure I bring out the female voices out of the shadow. Okay. Now, there are resources like Sound Girls are helping to empower the next generation of women's engineers. Now, let's look back in the incredible women who made their mark in the sound engineer field. We have Miss Haiti is considered the very first woman of sound engineer history. Miss Haiti McNair worked at RCA Victor in 1920s. She made the history on one of the very first women to handle the technical side of commercial music records, breaking barriers in the male-dominant field. Mary Shipman Howard is one of the first women recording engineers, sound and studio owners. Mary ran her own studios called Mary Howard Records in New York City, working with legendary Glenn Miller and a few others. Now, there is Leslie Ann Jones, who is a Grammy award-winning recording engineer. Leslie is a director of music records and scored the sound of Skywalker from Lucasfilm Company. Okay, now there's also one more person, Marcella. She mixes tracks for the artists like Britney Spears, Madonna, Pink, and Timberland. Now, these women are only a few of the pioneers who paved the way for next generations of women sound engineers. Now, we're going to go dive into the conversation with Ali, Denise, Jam, and Giorgi, and how they cross the barriers, be a sound engineer, to encourage more women to be or pick up on this field as well. You guys ready? First things first, Papa Satch, play that theme song for me.
Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about the band. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about the sound. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the music. All around. Let's talk about it.
All right, so welcome to the episode of Let's Talk About the Music. We are surrounded by 4 women of sound engineers that are pioneered to the independent musicians. We're going to go one by one, talk about your experience, who you guys are, and then we'll go into the debate on, well, not really a debate, on discussion on sound engineers, what got you guys started. Okay, so we are going to go around the room, alphabetical order. We're going to start with Allie. Allie has been part of a sound engineer for the past 20 years or so, and she's an amazing sound engineer. She taught me a few things, and also amazing drummer and all that stuff. So, Allie, go for it, and I will use each everybody one by one. Okay, Allie, go for it. You got 5 minutes.
All right, how's it going? My name's Allie. I reside in the Great Pacific Northwest. I currently working for / founded Basement Roots Entertainment. How I got involved with being an audio engineer is I've been playing drums in various genres for about 25 years now, and just learning with recording studios. I started out doing recording audio and learning how to mix and master and get, microphone placement and different frequencies and things like that. And I started dabbling with live audio about 15 years ago, because a lot of the venues in this area, you get there and all of a sudden there's no sound guy, so somebody has to do it. So it kind of started as an accident. And working with Law Dog Music back in the day, I did all their live audio for all their shows. And when I started Basement Roots, working with Shels, and she was my assistant for about 1.5 years, and we did quite a few shows out of the Y Sports Bar and Uncle Sam's. I'm kind of on a little hiatus from the live game right now, just because life is crazy. A lot's happened to me this year. But yeah, I love doing sound engineering of all types. Studio can be fun because it's a totally different beast than live. And just getting to meet different people and working with different genres and things like that. Started out with a small little 4-channel mixer and 2 microphones 20 years ago. And now we have interfaces and software and Lord knows how many microphones and tracking and whatnot. Y'all know the chaos of it, but it is so fun, and I'm glad that I do it. I think I actually enjoy it more than drumming, which is odd because people know how much I like to play drums. So I'm looking forward to the next little bit of time here we got, and hearing some perspectives of some other people and how they got involved and how they do it. I'm rambling. Why'd you make me go first? It's morning.
Right. All right. So we will continue on to the next person. Next person, we're going to talk to Miss Denise. She's a 3-time Grammy Awards for engineering and mixing. So Denise, please tell us more about you. You got 5 minutes if you want it.
I'm Denise Barbarita. Hello. I'm the owner and head engineer at Mona Lisa Studios in New York City. We're kind of a hybrid studio in the sense that we do music and we do post-production, mixing and recording both. A lot of our clientele is musical theater artists and writers, producers. We also do singer-songwriters and jazz and rock and basically any genre. The Grammy Awards were won in the children's music category with Lucy Kalantari, Joni Leeds, and John Sampson. All incredible artists and songwriters. It was a lot of fun doing those records. Let's see. And in post-production, we work with a few different companies, voiceover, narration, but also ambisonic mixing for VR 360. That's a fairly new thing for me. I basically had a client who does 360 video who showed up at my door and said, okay, I just spent a colossal amount of money on a mix I hate, so you're going to learn how to do ambisonic mixing because we need that. We'll be patient. And I'm like, okay. So it took a little while to figure out what exactly that meant and, update software, blah, blah, blah. But so far, so good. Where's wood? There it is. Let's see what else. So I started on this audio journey It was a Pat Benatar album, believe it or not. It was Precious Time. My aunt had bought it for me as a birthday present, and I was maybe 11 or 12. And I honest to God thought that she could sing multiple notes at once, because listening to the album, you can hear that the background vocals were her, right? You can hear that the voices are the same. So I was like, at 11, oh my God, she can sing 3 or 4 notes at a time. And so I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And I was getting all down on myself because I couldn't do it. And one day I picked up this Hit Parader magazine. She had like this Bam Bam Flintstone shirt on, and she's all, and the interviewer was asking her about her background vocal arrangements and overdubs. And I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, she cheated. She can't sing 3. She lied to me. I was mad for a few months, actually. And then, because I'm old, I went to the library and tried to find any books about recording and found out that this was just a normal thing. And I was silly for thinking people could sing a few notes at a time until I heard about throat singing. And then that's a whole other conversation. But, that started with, I think I got a 4-track recorder, started recording my own music. I'm a singer-songwriter, also guitar, voice, and that started the journey. Like, I knew when I was in high school that I wanted to be what I thought was a producer, until I realized that being an engineer was really what I wanted. Being able to shape the tonality of the sound, being able to get what the artist wanted, what their intentions were through sound. When it comes to live sound, I'm not a live sound girl. There's just there are way too many variables. Anytime I've done a live sound show, usually it's sound mixing for a TV show or something like that, where they have a musical guest. And I've got 2 bags packed for 2 microphones because I'm worried that I don't know where power is going to be. And, every single adapter that I could possibly have is there. I think other people are better suited for live sound. I like things contained and in their little boxes. And that's pretty much the skinny.
All right, cool. All right. And now we're also going to go next to Giorgi, right? Is that how you pronounce your name? I got it right. Yes. I'm horrible with names. All right. So Miss Giorgi is also award-winning singer and songwriter, producer, and engineer. And I am going to have her tell you all about her. Go ahead, Miss Giorgi.
So I'm probably older than everyone here. And I say that only because I started with analog, and when I was 14, you could actually join a club on the back of a Bazooka Joe comic book and sell Christmas cards in Saab and earn yourself your very own reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Wow.
So that's sort of like who I was. I was always doing boy things, right? Give me a screwdriver, I'm happy. And my grandfather was one to always have gear, cameras and tape recorders. And I also, as a kid, I was sick, I was home, and my neighbor, who was an engineer who designed prosthetics, he also used to take me to Radio Shack, if anybody ever heard of that. But you'd go there and buy pots. And he had one lung, smoked a cigar, and we made speakers and components. And I was shy, so even though I had musical abilities, I was scared to death to do anything. But at some point, my singer-songwriter got it was expensive, much more expensive then than it is today. So I sort of took my accounting skills and I started offering studios my accounting skills in exchange to have the key to their studio. So I started going in and I had purchase some live recording equipment, etc. But really, when I had the key and I was in there at night when nobody else was there, all the drummers in the area, I'd say, hey, come in, because, how many mics are on a set of drums? More than one. And you can learn a lot when you screw it up a lot, right? So that's, it was a progression to finally where I had some success. I was on a RCA and Atlantic Records, and they put us out in Europe, so we didn't bother any of the girl groups at the time. We didn't compete with them. We were good, but we can't compete. So, I'm in another country, and the point is, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to stay as an artist. And so I had to keep honing in on my engineering skills. And throughout my lifetime, having traveled to, say, California and New York, I've been around some name, not going to drop any, but because you're in that community, you're sitting next to people that they talk about today. Nobody talks about me. I was there. I did a lot of work, but I'm not talked about. And that's why I'm here today, because I should be with a beard talking about audio, right? And then maybe everybody would listen. So the point is, I opened my own. You like that? I opened my own studio in 1986, and I had a 16-track Fostax half-inch and an Allen and Heath board and speakers. And I had one stereo compressor, and I had a reverb and a delay. And, and I didn't have my band anymore. So I had to get into MIDI, because who was going to drum for me? So, I have to get the MSQ 700 and some keyboards and the Linn drum machine. And now I'm producing dance music, which I became a dance music production queen. And I had a record out in the Netherlands, blah, blah, blah. And so, again, my progression. And with my accounting skills in 1992, I ended up helping this studio, a couple of young guys. They were the best guys, still friends with one of them who's still living. And I helped them get ready, a huge SSL console when they're like 27 years old, and two, not one, but two Otari 24 2-inch machines, which turned into Studers. And at that point, I became sort of like a hybrid disco production queen, and I produced an album, blah, blah, blah. But all of this, I'm like working for others, but I've got a little side thing about being selfish, that I'm an artist myself, and I want to record me. So, I'm interested there. And I used my skills to support other studios and counsel them and give them, be a consultant. I still do that. Eventually, I went back to school, got a couple of masters, and I began teaching Pro Tools and started a studio about 20 years ago in Wells, Maine, and began my journey of everybody should have Pro Tools, the whole world. And back then, you could buy a little M box and get Pro Tools for like $399, which you can't even get a subscription now, right? So I am, I'd say, probably retired for many reasons. I have some health stuff. And mostly I have kids that I mentor. I wish they were more female than male, but they're not at the present time. So right at the moment, I built my own, give me a screwdriver, some wires. I figured out how to do my own 7.1.4 immersive studio for like, I don't know, a couple of $1,000. And I can tell you how to do it without losing your mind. In the meantime, I helped 3 other guys, no women, where are they? Wish they'd call me, set up their own immersive studios, right? One of them is in Boston, one of them is and 2 of them are in Florida. And they're all like huge stuff, thousands of dollars, but I have my little immersive studio, which I love. And I was happy to hear Denise talk about spatial, because that's another whole component of this. So at the present time, I live in Maine, and I still have an Allen and Heath board. I've got Pro Tools. Even though I almost lost everything I own, I hung on to my, expensive PMC monsters. They'll go with me when I go into the grave and get melted down into infinity. So that's kind of like I'm at a point in my life where I'm a sound healer, and I am very much involved in doing an immersive, on location, live, outside recording, and then in the studio of a sound, what people call sound bots. So I will be releasing, hopefully, would have been last year, but Giorgi had to get into a life-threatening car accident because the story needed like something else to go on, right? So this year, 2025, and it's nice to see all of you, because meeting you, I feel like I have some people that I can bounce things off of, like I'd love to know what Jam and Denise and Ali would think about what, if, does it sound like anything? Did I screw it up? I don't know, so I am restoring my own music and mentoring kids, helping them get into college, and just looking for a place to share and talk. And hi, Jam, hi, Ali, and Denise, and Shell, and anybody else out there. If you can find me on the internet and you want to ask me a question, please don't hesitate. I would love to answer anything you might ask.
You got it. All right. And the last but not least, we have Miss Jam. She is a mixing and master engineer, music producer, and proud owner of, I'm going to say your studio's name wrong, Dinky Studios, which is, did I say it right? No?
That's great. It's Dank. DNK, Dank Studios.
All right. Tell us more about you so that way I don't mess it up.
Yeah,
that
no
is
problem.
such a drummer word to use to name your studio. Just saying.
So yeah, the studio name, I could tell that story later if you wanted.
Okay.
But yeah. So my name is Jam Phelps. I'm a mixing and mastering engineer. I do dabble a little bit in production. I'm also a drummer. And I own a studio out on 30 wooded acres in Southern Virginia. So I live in the woods. I make records in the woods. I used to record a lot more. Now I just kind of record people who I already know, and I mix records for people all over the world. Denise, Joni Leeds, is a friend of mine. I've done some mastering for Joni as well. I'm really involved in the kids' music scene, thanks to Stravity Yops getting me into that. What got me into this whole thing? I guess it was I lived in Seattle for 4 years, and the whole time I was out there, I couldn't find anybody to play music with as a drummer. That's all I was doing. I didn't know anything about audio. And I just thought to myself, I think it'd be really cool if I could just make music on my own. And I don't play any melodic instruments, but I heard about MIDI, and I got like a little setup. I got a little mixer, and I got Audacity, and I just started learning a little bit about audio. And then I ended up moving to North Carolina, and we had a garage. And I joined things like Sound Girls, where I connected with y'all, and Omni Sound Project and all of that. And I started learning little by little about audio. I got some really great mentors, and I invested in some gear, upgraded all my equipment to something that was a little more mid-level. And then the pandemic hit, and I got laid off from my job. And I said, you know what? I'm going for it. And so I decided to open my studio full time. And I've been doing that ever since. I've been really, really blessed to be able to continue mixing records for a living. I've worked with some incredibly talented people. I would say my favorite thing about this job is getting to hear someone's song first before anybody else.
Right.
And really bringing it to life and making it sound exactly how the artist wants. My studio also focuses on marginalized voices, so I'm very passionate about that. I figure there's plenty of spaces in the world for, cis white dudes and people in my community, and women, gender nonconforming, and members of the queer community deserve a safe space to make music. I also record allies. I work with some tremendous, very selective, but I do work with some tremendous men who are incredible allies to the studio. And yeah, I guess that really sums me up and what I'm all about.
All right, cool. All right. And I am Shels, so let's talk about the music. Allie actually took me under her wing for about a year and a half during COVID to learn how to do sound engineers and try to put things together. I did a few live shows with her, set things up. We're two women hauling this big ass speakers up on a stage. We're like, okay. And we did it. And then we had a beer. And then also I took some classes on sound editing and all that stuff in college, which I've now graduated from. And anyway, so I got a chance to understand what you guys might do in case of sound engineers. So it was very learning education in it. I really do want to do more of it, but I am here with my podcast. Hopefully I can learn something from you guys to improve my podcast stuff. So you never know. So, all right. Thank you, ladies, for your introductions. All right, I know we all already talked about your inspirations of becoming a auto engineer or sound engineer, and so I'm going to skip that question. So, can you describe your experience with different types of microphones and their application to various recording situations? I know you guys did live, you guys did studio. So what are the different microphones you have worked with? Go ahead, Denise.
I just look at microphones as tools in a toolbox. When you're looking at whatever instrumentation you're recording, you make the best choices based on what you have in the room. Some studios, I think most studios have a basic cabinet. You've got your Sennheisers and your Shores and all that. But really, at the end of the day, it's what do you have in the closet and what are you recording and what works best for that situation? What tools do you have? Some people are purists when it comes to what type of mic do you use on a kick drum? What type of mic do you use on a mic cabinet? What type of vocal mic do you use? You use what you have in the moment is what you do. And, I prefer condensers for lead vocals. Sometimes ribbon mics, depending on the voice and depending on the style of music. For drums, I have a pair of Earthworks SR77s. They're amazing. I love those microphones. They're my babies. But sometimes I find that they're a little bit too perfect and too clean and a little bit clinical. So I keep waffling back and forth between those and a pair of KM184s. Just back and forth, over and over and over. Like, I'm going to use the Earthworks. Oh, doesn't that sound great? And then I'm mixing. I'm like, geez, I wish they were just a little bit, So then I go back to the KM184s and I'm like, oh, look at that. They sound great, but I really wish that, every microphone has a personality. There's another one. I have a love for biodynamic microphones. I love that company. Their mics are not the sexiest, but they always work. And they're always awesome. I would put Shure in that category as well. You know, you could take any 57, throw it off the Empire State Building, and it'll still work. It just, they're workhorses. You can record a drum kit with 7 mics if you wanted to, SM57s. Biodynamic has a mic called an M201 that, you know, sometimes I forget it's in the closet, and then we're doing a session and I'm like, wouldn't it be great to use a 201 on the snare? Let me do that this time. So I switch it out and I'm sitting there, you know, oh my God, it's the best mic in the world. I love it. Why don't I use it all the time? And then the next session I use it, I'm like, I should probably put the 57 on there. And then that's the perfect mic. Like, you know, it just, they're all tools. And I think once you start getting a little too fussy and once you start getting a little too, what's the word? Just once you start getting too fussy about what mics to use for what, then you're missing the point. You know, microphones are tools, period. You get to know them like your friends. Some of them are a little aggressive. Some of them are a little passive. Some of them are just right. Some of them have attitude. Some of them don't. And you go with what you have in the moment. But there was a point to all that. But anyway, that I'm going to leave it there. Somebody else can take over.
All right. Anybody else want to piggyback on that question?
I can agree with everything you said. What I see working with younger people is we can talk about all these great mics, but the reality is, unless they're going to school or have an experience where they can intern in a studio like the one my friend John owns, Futura in Boston, and he has a lot of interns from Berkeley. They get to work with a closet, mamma mia, it's got everything, thousands and thousands of dollars of microphones, Bronner and Neumann, this thing, that thing, and the preamps and Neves and everywhere. But the reality is, you're probably going to be sitting there with like your Sterling microphones that they say are a match pair. And you've got to figure out how the heck are you going to make that work when you're recording, you know, the overheads of a set of drums. And well, maybe you've got a Beta 91 and somebody else gave you a 58. And so understanding what the application of the mics are does give you a head start, understanding, well, this is a certain type of dynamic, but this dynamic is a little different. And those things help you. But the reality, okay, my reality, I did Strawberry Fields after John Lennon died. And I'm in a studio in Boston. We wanted to do it like the Beatles. I couldn't believe they had Neumanns coming out of the woodwork. 67s, 87s, 47s, 48s. I haven't seen those since. I mean, you're hard pressed to find those. So when we're talking to me, young people, I think I don't know how they're coming into being an engineer. Most of us, it sounds like we didn't get to go to school, although I did later. If you go to school, you probably have more of an advantage in terms of being around what we would probably call more professional rather than prosumer microphones. Myself, I've got some nice microphones, and I got into a thing where I would buy old 1960s, what they call lipstick microphones. And okay, Ali's on that one. And some of those 1960 mics that came with the Webcore, tape reel-to-reels, those were really good microphones. So I tend to, I made a record one time and we were in the mix, and I was the person had a studio in their house, And all we had was a Macintosh microphone that went to the, I don't know, the Quadra 87 in 2000. And I did my vocal on it. That was it. I had to sing the part. We needed it. It didn't matter. So use what you have, what Denise said, and learn what microphone, what is a dynamic, what is a condenser, what's large, what's small. And it's really good to have a great signal path. You have to know your gain staging, because you could have the greatest mic in the world, and if you recorded it at -60, it's not going to be a nice sound. Amen. Next.
All right. Allie, you want to bounce back on that, Jam? On the microphones?
I as Shels knows, I've had to do many recordings in many places. The first studio, we'll call it, when I was in a band called Far From the Genuine, and we were signed to a small label, and having to record lots of tracks in short periods of times and lots of deadlines and stuff. We used to record in our guitarist's parents' living room that had 12-foot vaulted ceilings and all this stuff, and we used whatever we had lying around. Those microphones that she was just talking about, we had 2 of those, and we thought they were crap until we actually recorded with them, and we were like, whoa, too bad you can't get these anymore. Like, it was a sad day when they finally stopped working. But going back and forth between live sound and recording studio sound, because they're 2 totally different beasts, I have found this is still my go-to for warmer vocals or like backgrounds. That's just a trusty MXL 990. I'm sure you guys probably had one at one point, but that style of microphone I learned works great for like warmer tone stuff. But like Shelly, you like digging for change, and you know that Kenny's vocals are a little more aggressive. There's some more screaming, some more yelling. That won't work for that. You'll just break it. So actually what we've been using, it started out as an experiment. This is just a Sennheiser E902 kick drum mic. Put a pop filter on that and let him scream till his lungs are blue, and it's actually making a really cool sound, nice and clean. But again, with the tools that you have, it's nice when you run live sound to have decent microphones, but that doesn't always happen. People drop them, they spill stuff on them, they kick them. I try to bring my own, but I've had so many microphones destroyed at live events. And it's just a matter of learning what sounds good with what. Like, I like to use just plain little shotgun mics for overheads on drums if I'm in the right size room. Like, shoot, I remember Radio Shack with the 1/4-inch jack microphones that we plugged into our tape recorder back in the day to make our demos. Like, I just 1,000% agree with all of you that use what you've got to the best of your ability. If you got zillions of dollars, then go ahead, go buy the Cadillac and then some of all the microphones. But yeah, it's been fun over the years to figure out what works for what, and doing live and studio stuff has helped with me with that, because I was young and dumb and just thought a microphone was a microphone, but I know now that's not true. When I'm doing a podcast, I might use something like this. This is an old Yeti. That was like the top of the crop when it came out. I don't know. It's probably nothing now for podcasts, but I still have one. So,
Miss Jam, do you want to add your 2 cents to the microphone conversation?
Yeah. So my specialty is mixing people who've recorded at home, like bedroom musicians and producers are my bread and butter. And I think that it's all about the best microphone is the microphone you have, right? So if you have a microphone and it's recording you and it's doing a job, and if it sounds good, it is good, then there you go. But the cool thing about living in the year of our Lord 2024 is that things are getting way better in quality without going way up in price. And you can still buy, you can still buy all kinds of stuff that costs thousands of dollars. But some of the best vocal takes I've ever gotten are on the Lewitt Audio 440 Pure. It's a $289 microphone. And if you have like alto to higher vocal, it sounds fantastic. It's cheaper than the SM7B, which is a lot of people go to for their studios, and you can get some incredible sounds. Now, if you live in New York City and there's buses going by you every 5 minutes and there's cars honking and, all this noise, getting a condenser microphone might not be your best choice because it's going to pick up every single thing around you. So you can get a dynamic like the SM7B or like the one I'm using right now, which is like the PreSonus podcast microphone. And you can get some incredible sounds if you know how to mix it correctly, if you know what you're listening for, if you know how to use EQ, you can take a lot of microphones to the next level in post. It does make things sound better and easier if you use the nice mics to begin with. But there are things that you can do to manipulate sounds in the mixing process to make it sound incredible these days. So don't go out and spend $1 million on microphones when you don't know the difference between a ribbon, a dynamic, and a condenser. Get yourself a little educated on what does your voice sound like? What does your instrument sound like? What is your environment like? What is your room like? And then you can really start to pick a microphone that's going to work best for you.
The microphone that I'm go ahead, Jeannie. Go right, Giorgi.
And I hope I don't sound like an elitist right now, but I am a singer. And whether anybody likes when I sing or not, I am a singer. So I'm going to give a perspective that probably makes me sound terrible. But as a singer, I will say that when I have a really nice mic in front of me, oh boy, can I hear the difference.
Okay.
I will say that. And because I don't have those mics in my house. And I have something that's maybe close or similar. But when I go to my friend John's studio and, he puts the mic in front of me and it's a $7,000 Bronner or an $8,000, whatever, I have to say there is something. And of course, maybe the next thing will be is the preamp with that mic. So maybe I'm a little tainted.
Tainted.
I don't think that's elitist at all. I mean, again, microphones are tools, and some tools cost more than others, and some are easier to deal with than others. But a lot of it is based on your environment, as Jam was saying. If you're recording things in your living room in New York City, it's noisy, it's loud, buses, trains, people screaming, all of those things. So if you have this high-end condenser mic with your high-end mic pre, you're going to have a lot of background noise that isn't really conducive to what it is you're trying to do. If you're in an environment like, a professional studio, you can get away with microphones that are much more high-end because you have an environment that's much quieter and is conducive to recording things. Again, it's like, how much money do you have? What do you need to do? And where are you recording are the three most important questions. And then, trial and error. Everything's trial and error. I've been lucky to work in some of the top studios in the city. I went to Berkeley, so I had Berkeley-itis in a bad way when I came out. If you know Berkeley people, you know what that is. Basically, like, what do you mean you don't have a C800? It's not even a studio. And you're like, shut up. It's the same. It's just this idea that somehow you have to have a specific mic for a specific job. And I will say, from doing live production sound, I became a lot less precious about things like that. A friend of mine always used to joke, it's broadcast quality. You just need broadcast quality. That's it. And what that means is that you can actually hear it. So, it's all relative. If you have thousands of dollars at your disposal and $3,000 for a microphone doesn't make your eyes twitch, then get the $3,000 microphone, but understand that just because it's a $3,000 microphone doesn't make it the best microphone for the job. It's at that point, you're just stroking your ego. And also depending on the environment and what it is you're recording. As Ali was talking about that Sennheiser dynamic for a male vocal who's just screaming. I remember I had this one session. It was like a hardcore kind of band. And I gave him a D112, wrapped it in foam, because he didn't like to stand still. You know, he wanted to jump around and do his thing. So I wrapped the D112 up in foam and I'm like, eat the mic. It's going to sound best if you just eat it, you know? And he's like, what do you mean? Just put it to your mouth like it's a harmonica. Just do that. Best vocals I've ever recorded for hardcore. Absolutely, bar none. It was perfect. And he was happy. And a lot of the reason why it was a great performance is because he was performing, right? We sometimes forget about that when we talk about all these precious issues about what microphone to use. Oh my God, you can't use anything less than a blah, blah, blah. No, you use what you have and I've always said that my job is to make musicians' lives easy. That's my job in a nutshell as a recording engineer. Make their lives easy. Let them be able to perform without any, without any problems. Let them just be them. They don't have to worry about stay 3 inches away from the microphone so that we don't get proximity effect. Okay, now go. Make sure that you stay this far around the microphone or we're going to have problems because it's a tight cardioid. They don't care. They don't care about any of that. They just want to be able to sing their hearts out, or I'm sorry, guitar player, but we have that 60 cycle hum. Could you maybe try another pedal, blah, 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 blah. Just let them play. We have tools now where we can fix those things. We've got apps for that. So whatever their rig is, you do your best to get it as clean as possible, but sometimes it's not possible because they've got some pedal from 1972 that buzzes like a saw. There's nothing you can do about it, right? There are some things you can do, but sometimes you're just stuck with what you have and you have to deal with it and find a way to fix it later. I hate saying that, like, we'll just fix it in post, but sometimes that's the job too. You do the best with what you have in the moment. And if I find that if musicians are free to do whatever it is that they want without any encumbrances, they're going to perform much better. And at the end of the day, we are capturing a performance. That's it. Capture performance. Get out of their way. That's it. If a microphone you have is too much microphone for the job, hand them something different. And 9 times out of 10, the performance is going to be 100 times better. So that's my shit.
Yeah. I think also, like, just because you use the same microphone as Whitney Houston doesn't mean you're going to have the same voice as Whitney Houston. Like,
absolutely not.
It's about the performance. And I have recorded some of the best vocalists on, couple $100 mics. And these people could sing on anything. I could hand them a 58, record it. I could hand them a 57, record it. It doesn't matter because it's just the performance is what connects with people. It's not what microphone you chose in the moment. It's, am I buying what you're selling as a performer, as a singer? And I think you can accomplish that. And yeah, would they like the sound of their own voice on a nicer mic? Like you, Giorgi, like I do my best performance when I have, a U87 in front of me or whatever it is. But not everybody's like that. Some people do their best performance when they can eat the mic. So I agree, Denise, like 100%.
Allie, you gonna say something? Okay. The microphones that I have used for my podcast, even try doing a live location, I don't know if you can see. Oh yeah, this is a Behringer LS888E5S. When I bought this, it actually came with instructions what kind of mic it was. I think it's a Dymatic. And when I was learning about sound editing at college, we went through different kind of microphones, what we can use. And one for sure, not knowing that there is a difference between microphones. The microphone that I'm using right now is actually a Rono. May I get the Rono? and is one of the top microphones in the podcast business. And this was $100 at Best Buy, and it's the best microphone I've ever used. And I just love that. I've always wanted a Rono for doing microphones and doing the podcast. So now I have it. It was the best investment I have, and I'm just loving the Rono. So thank you for sharing your guys' perspective on microphone. Because again, I did not know there was so many different things of a microphone from way back when Giorgi's first started till you guys are going. So thank you for that insight. All right. So we're going to move forward to, I know a lot of you guys do, some do concert and event and do sound. So how do you approach setting up a live sound system for either a concert, an event, or in the studio? Who wants to start with that one?
All right. I'll be brave, and then you can all figure it out with me. So I have done a lot of live, and but mostly I am like the rest of you. I am in-house. I do mixing and mastering, very similar to what everyone's doing. The reason why I don't do a lot of live is if you're going to be a studio engineer, I had to make that choice because I found that being in those environments, it gets kind of noisy and it could hurt my ears. And so I wanted to keep them for the studio. That being said, I tend to be someone who likes to work with schematics, with drawings. I like to plan my sessions out. I like to know what is that play. Now, you don't always, please forgive me. I know that you can just walk in and you got to go for it. Okay. And you don't have any plan. However, with larger venues, and if you're talking about a concert, you hopefully have a venue that has some pictures somewhere, and you can find out, well, what equipment is there and what equipment do I need? So I am sort of like the Abbey Road person who, when I do any session, I have diagrams, I have pictures, I know the wiring, I know how I'm going to wire it, I know what microphones I think might be on the other end. Am I bringing snakes? Are there solo performers? Are there people talking? Is this, a piano solo? There's so many components to it. So I have to understand the artist and the producer. If this is a band, I need to understand what is their music, what songs are they performing, and who are the solo artists. There's so many things to think about. Now, that being said, I'm home one night, it's a Sunday night, and somebody says, oh, the sound person can't show up. Can you come? We know you do sound. Oh my God, what are you kidding me? I don't know what's going on. I'm walking in cold to a room, right? With a board that maybe it works, this doesn't work. I don't know where the speakers are coming from. What are the microphones? My God, thank God I brought my own. I brought some of my own stuff because you just don't know. So if I can plan, I'm going to draw a picture. I'm going to take pictures of what I did do so that if I had to repeat something, we do post-production. We work with artists who are doing mixes in immersive and surround. And let's say, no names, but a particular person, they did a live tour, and now some of the vocals they wanted to fix. We have to go get that SE microphone. It's like an $80, $90 microphone that we're going to cut the vocals with. So it's important to, from my perspective, understand what is expected of me and to figure out a way how I can bring that to life for the artist.
All right, Allie, I know you want to say something. I saw you mentioning, so go for it.
Well, she's triggering the anxiety there with literally everything she talked about. And with you working with me, you know, it probably got you too. This is why we drink. Like you said, throw the speaker up there, have a beer, and realize you just accomplished that. The more live stuff that I got into, the reason why I like the live stuff is kind of ironic because I do have pretty bad anxiety, and I like the variables that you don't always know what you're walking into. Okay, that worked last week, but did it get tipped over in the van and now it doesn't work? Or did someone spill something on it? But we got to the point where we liked to work with the same places consistently so that we knew what we had to work with and when. And I totally 1000% agree with if you could do the research on who you're running sound for so that you know what type of music you're doing, what they're looking for, all of that. One of my most recent events that I ended up running sound for had more variables than I could even imagine, and it turned out great. I got a phone call from a friend about a week before the event. The local news network out here was doing a feature on local bands, and they wanted to have Brian Buck and the Crossroads come and do this, and they needed a sound engineer. So I was like, all right, I'll put my PA together and all that and see what I can do. We originally were told that we were going to be doing this production on a stage, an outdoor stage. Yeah, no, it ended up being on the grass right in front of the lake. So we had no backdrop. Our whole background was a lake. We're setting up amps and drums and PAs on the grass. And it turns out there was only one power source in this entire park for myself and all of my equipment and the entire newscast. So we're not knowing if this power source is going to work or not. And it ended up being one of the most fun yet nerve-wracking gigs I've ever done. But I mean, just with the live stuff, I've learned that you acquire a lot of things. Many of my friends have seen my storage facility and my studio, and I have a lot of stuff. I have 4 different PAs just for live events, depending on the size of the venue, different genres, who I'm working with. And then my studio is actually a dual threat studio. We can do live stuff in it, and I have a system for that records differently than like if I'm recording a band or a solo artist. But I just love the challenge of the live sound stuff. I don't know about the rest of you that have been able to do the live stuff. I find it just relaxing. Order something you like to eat and, chill when you got somebody in the studio and you just want to make them sound good. Let's face it, there's a lot of gear snots out there that they come in and they think they know how to do your job better than you. And you're like, okay, got it. And you just make them sound good. But I love the live stuff. And I never thought I would until I got out there and started doing it more. I started working with one of the premier guys in our area. He just asked me for help one day and I started helping him, and that's how I got into it. And then a couple of venues that knew that I had a PA and just working with it and figuring it out. I don't know, call me crazy. I like all the variables of it, the chaos rather than the structure and all of that in the studio. So maybe there's something wrong up there. Who knows? But it's so fun. And I love all the variables. I don't know, Shels, you're back in the studio permanently now. So maybe I made you a little too crazy doing the live stuff. I don't know.
No, I haven't got, I am going to be going out in the studios right now, but I don't know how to work it as a podcast yet. I'm trying to comprehend how to do all this stuff. So that's one thing I need to figure out, how to do a podcast live somewhere with all the gear that I do have now that I can actually do this with. So that's where I'm in the studio right now until I comprehend that portion of the podcast.
I think you remember when Law Dog Music did the live at Hemp Fest stuffs.
Yeah.
We didn't even have that much equipment, but that was difficult to mix when we were done, was the hardest part.
Right. All right. Anyone, ladies, who wants to comment on the live sound system of concert, events, or studio?
I'll say this, like I said before, live sound makes my eyes twitch. Because there are too many variables. All the things that you're thinking about, all the things that could go wrong. That's why I don't do it. That's it right there. There are two.
Oh, and they do go wrong.
Oh, they go wrong more times than they don't. Just from various events that I've done, there was one recording. We were doing two harpsichord recording, which, number one, if you didn't know this now, I will let you know, two harpsichords, trying to keep them in tune is almost impossible. We found that out the hard way. And it takes a really long time to tune harpsichords. That's another thing that I did not know. And now that I know it, yeah. So I'm working with this composer who I was working with. He was one of my colleagues at a college where I used to teach. And, he's like, Denise, we're going to do this, two harpsichords recording. I've got the space and it's like Outback, Connecticut, someplace. I really want you to record it. Okay. So again, like Giorgi, did my whole plan, figured out what mics I was going to use. And it's like 6 mics at most. I think it was 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8 microphones. So what did I do? I brought 12 microphones just in case. I had no idea where the power was going to be. So I brought a whole bunch of power strips and a whole bunch of extension cords. I brought every adapter that I had just in case. And, laptop interface, couple mic pre's in a case, had everything ready to go. The night before, I had this nightmare that I had everything set up, ready to go. And, my friend comes over to me, Denise, how are we doing? We're all set up. We're ready to go. I just need to get my eye lock and everything's fine. In my dream, I'm digging around for my eye lock and realize that I don't have it. And then I woke up. That was the biggest nightmare I've ever had in my entire life. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I put the eye lock in my purse in a little hidden compartment. And the entire time we were driving there, I'd keep putting my hand in the bag, like, is the eye lock there? Eye lock's there. Okay, we're good. Is the eye lock still there? Eye lock's still there. Okay, we're good. Is the eye lock still there? I mean, literally the whole 3-hour drive up there, I was fixated on whether I had the eye lock. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, you did pack a hard drive, right? Oh shit. Did you pack? Yes, I did. Yes, I packed a hard drive. So the whole time up there, I'm going through my entire list of like, do you remember packing that? I remember packing. Do we have enough mic cables? I don't know. I brought 20. That should be enough. I think for 8 mic. Yeah, that should be enough. Because I had never seen the space. I'd never been there. I had no idea whether they had clean power. I had no idea whether they were 2-prong, 3-prong, whatever. No idea. Absolutely clueless. I had no idea where I was going to be in relation to the stage area. I didn't even know if there was a stage. And it was this round, wood-filled rotunda. It was a beautiful space. And it turned out that the biggest issue was trying to get 2 harpsichords to play in tune.
Yeah.
That was the hardest part. I don't know if anybody has dealt with harpsichords before, but my goodness. And the only cool thing, well, there were a lot of cool things about that whole thing, but the one cool thing is the harpsichords were loaned to us by a company in Connecticut that either restores or builds harpsichords to their original specs of when they were made. And I learned more about harpsichords in that weekend than I think I ever knew for my entire life. These people are so persnickety about every little detail, about, whether one scrolls and one has an edge, what color and what were the keys made of, what are the strings made of, like every little bit. It was fascinating, just absolutely fascinating the entire time. And I feel every time I see the composer, we look at each other and he's like, 15 minutes, I'll be done in 15 minutes, leave me alone. Every time we see each other, because that's all we heard for 2 days straight, because the harpsichords would constantly slip. So, and the pieces that he wrote were very aggressive. So these folks were banging on the harpsichords and just banging them out of tune. And it was just the nature of the music, really. It was quite an experience, but that was the last live recording that I've done. That was probably like 2015. Not for me. Not for me. Too many variables, too many things can go wrong, and too many I'm a nervous wreck every single time I have to do a live recording. Absolute nervous wreck. My husband stays away from me like 20 feet. Like, how you doing? Fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. Are you ready for tomorrow? No. Yes. Maybe. I can't relax until the job is done. And then I'll sleep for like 3 days. But no. I don't have the temperament for live recording, especially when you're thrown into something and you have no idea where anything is, what's going on, who you're recording, blah, blah, blah. At least I knew some of it, but I didn't know all of it. This other project we did was like an MTV thing where they had ballerinas and they had a metal band. That was in some warehouse out in Sasquatch, Brooklyn, where it took like an hour to get there from the train. So imagine I've got these 2 bags that I'm rolling with just God knows what, everything I could possibly find. I asked them politely many, many times not to use this one particular cartage company because they're always a nightmare. And they went with them anyway because they were cheaper. So we're doing a metal band. We requested a specific drum kit. They sent us a jazz kit with an 18-inch kick drum. It was like a jazz Gretsch kit. And the drummer just started panicking because he asked for double bass. We were supposed to have 2 D88s. They sent us 1. Or no, they sent us 2 D88s, but they only sent us 1 harness. I could go on. It was insane. But that was probably the absolute just terrifying day I've ever had in my entire life. Because just everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And it had nothing to do with us. It had to do with the fact we didn't get the gear that we requested. We didn't get the mics that we requested. We got the wrong drum kit. And trying to tell a metal drummer that you're going to have to make do with a double bass pedal and 1 bass drum, he was not happy, to say the least. It was just crazy, but it turned out really well. So whatever, we saved the day. Everything was fine, but it was hours of just panic, just unadulterated panic. And I'm once again going to say no to that scenario.
Okay.
It is not where I like to live. So just huge amounts of respect for people who do live sound, because whether it's production sound, whether it's being in a club or doing tours, like, I just mad respect, because it's hard. It's a hard job.
Okay. Jam, you haven't even spoken on this topic. Do you want to put your sense in there?
Yeah, I've never done live sound and I don't really plan on doing it. And at this point, I'm 41. I don't even go to much shows that are later than like 9 o'clock anymore. So like the thought of having to be focused. Also, part of what makes me a great mix engineer is I have incredible hearing. And so mixing live sound, it's like I have to wear special earplugs to go to shows and stuff to protect my hearing. And with live sound, I just don't know if I'd be able to hear after 30 minutes. So mad respect to people who do live shows. It's not really my bag. But as far as setting up for a session with an artist, I usually just need to know what kind of music they're playing, what the vocalist sounds like, what instruments are going to be needed. And then I can usually have set up before they get here. And then if there's something that just doesn't sound right or I need to change the mic, I always just have my little mic locker over here and I can just switch it out real quick. So
now, when I was learning from Allie about doing sound, Angie from Kitty Junk. You guys know Angie, Kitty Junk,
Atrocity
and
Girl.
Atrocity
Yeah.
Girl. We would go to live shows when they're playing, and she would quiz me on what Allie was teaching me. We're at this one venue. They recently remodeled, so I'll go ahead and tell who they are. They are the Airport Tavern. They used to be on a very small, condensed little area, and she would ask me, so what do you think could go wrong with this venue? I go, well, it's fun, it's small, and the sound just bounced everywhere because it's so small, and you can hear how loud it was. And now they remodel, it is 10 times better than it was 2 years ago. And so she would quiz me on what Allie was teaching me about the sound in the room, how it can possibly improve. So that's where I started to really know the difference between live shows and studio, to understand the basics of how it would bounce around. I mean, I also did some live shows as a DJ for weddings and such. So there's one particular scenery we used to have at a across the pond in Gig Harbor, I think it was. And the travel of where we were at would actually travel through the water, through the microphones inside here, and people would actually hear it through the wedding or the part that we were DJing from. So that was also interesting. They always want to try to block it. Like, you can't block it because water actually travels the sound to where the microphone is going to come out of. So that's my intake on that aspect. So, okay. Anything else you want to add to this before we go to the next question? Okay. All right. Okay. So what digital audio workstations like DAWs are you most comfortable working with, and why?
I work in Reaper. And
Okay.
people who use Reaper are kind of referred to as, like, you know, a Reaper cult. Like, we're very loyal to our DAW. But the reasons that I use it is, time is money, and it's fast, and it uses little CPU, and it makes my mixing process super fast. I know it really well. I really like that it is affordable. It's $60 for your lifetime license. I like that it doesn't come with a bunch of stuff I don't need, fancy bells and whistles and MIDI instruments and super good plugins, because then I can actually save the money on the cheaper DAW and go and get the plugins that I really want to use for about the same price. But I will tell you this, the best DAW is the one you know. The best DAW is the one you like, and it's the one you know. They do not sound any different than one another, and all of them can do a lot of the similar stuff. They can all do the basics. So it's all about, if you pick a DAW and you like it, learn the crap out of it, get to know it, and use it all the time. And if you don't like it, switch it and learn something else. It all just depends on what you like, what your preferences are, and what makes you happy at the end of the day. And stop DAW shaming people. Don't go on the internet. I call it DAW shaming. You go on the internet and you go, oh, you use FL Studio. You're not a real mix engineer. It's like, well, do their songs sound good? If their songs sound good, it's good. And it doesn't matter.
I'm a Reaper girl too. I'm a Reaper girl too, because I'm like, I never had the Pro Tools budget at first. So I started out with Adobe Studio, learned that, used the FL Studio for drum loops and metronomes and stuff. And now I'm on to Audacity and Reaper, depending on what I'm doing. But I do love the Reaper.
Yeah.
I'm a Pro Tools girl, 100%, mostly because I started on Sound Tools and Sound Designer back in the day, and just went through the whole procession of different versions of Pro Tools. So it's something that I know pretty much like the back of my hand. You know, every new update, they add some, you know, as Jam called it, like bells and whistles. And there's some stuff that's useful to me, some stuff that isn't. I have Reaper. When I first started into the ambisonics journey, I didn't have some things that allowed me to do ambisonic mixing. So I got Reaper, and Reaper confounded me in many different ways. And they have like a Pro Tools skin that sort of works, but I just, again, I got twitchy, and then I just kind of stuck with Pro Tools and then figured out what I had to do in order to do what I needed to do. I also have Logic, and I have Logic, if I'm going to be honest, the reason I have it is so that when people send me their files, I can put them into Pro Tools myself rather than have to deal with other people's bouncing, so that mono tracks stay mono tracks. I'd really appreciate it if people would learn how to export from their various DAWs to be intercompatible, because that is the bane of my existence, having to deal with trying to make, what was a mono file that's now a stereo file back to mono. There's a plugin, I can't remember the name of it, that does that for you. But, I always ask for AAFs for Logic sessions so that everybody's editing is still intact and I can fix things in Pro Tools without having to try to fix and edit that's already embedded and committed. As far as Reaper is concerned, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to try to learn it. I'm going to try to get proficient on it, but I don't necessarily have a reason to, other than curiosity. So,
well,
I mean,
if you ever need any help or you have questions, you hit me up anytime.
You know what? There are so many different ways to configure it that I think that's why it confounded me, because it's so user configurable to however you want it. And if I remember correctly, it was something you don't have aux tracks and audio tracks and instrument tracks like Pro Tools does. You can configure every channel the way you want it, which is nice. I did appreciate that, but I'm also like, just make it easy. Can we just make it easy? Can we just make it so that I can do a session without having to think about it? I'd really like to not think about it. So
that's what I love about Reaper, is that a track is a track is a track. You can drag and drop anything into a bus. So it's like, that's what I'm saying about preferences. Like, you love that about Pro Tools. You find it really easy. I find Pro Tools a little difficult, but I find Reaper easy. So it's all about like just finding what you like and using what you like,
I think coming from a pro audio background, Pro Tools makes the most sense because that was the template or the software. Whereas, Logic, if I remember correctly, Opcode Vision was bought by Apple, and then Logic was basically what they did with Opcode Vision. It was a long time ago, so I'm not 100% remembering right. But the way that Logic deals with audio is very much a synthesis type of way. The Logic shines when it comes to MIDI with composition, with the way that everything is set up. Pro Tools is still sitting in 2001 when it comes to MIDI, even in, the year of our Lord 2024. It's still like, really? You can't just give me a SysX dump, really? We can't do, okay, fine, whatever. It's little things that Pro Tools does not excel at. It excels at a lot of different things, but MIDI is not one of them. And there are some people that are really good with it. I find it a little clunky, and yet that's where Logic shines. But I find it very clunky when it comes to dealing with audio. Reaper.
I think that about Ableton. Ableton is really clunky when it comes to like mixing and mastering, but it's like a producer's dream DAW. Right? Because there's like so many configurations that you can do with MIDI, and you can hook it up to your live set and have like your MIDI backing tracks and all kind of stuff. But using it to mix a song, get out of town. So it just depends on like what it is that you want to do, like what your goals are.
I have two producers that I work with that do use Ableton, and they are always like, yo, D, you need to check it out. Yo, check out what I can do. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's great. That's awesome. So when are you going to export the tracks for me to mix? Oh, yeah. I'll do that. And
then I have a video saved, my favorite YouTube video of how to export your tracks to send to a mix engineer in every DAW that I have saved. And what I do is I ask the client, oh, what do you use? And then they tell me, and I go, okay, here you go. This is how I want you to do it.
Right.
And it's been really helpful. It keeps tracks in mono that are mono and stereo and otherwise. It shows them how to turn the effects off the vocal because that's what I really want. I want the effects off. I want a dry
Yes.
vocal, please. And everything like that. And it's been really helpful to just kind of have those videos saved. So
Yeah,
that way I'm
whatever
not,
those links are, please please share.
oh yeah, I will.
I
I'll
have a
send you.
thing on my website like Logic people. Please send things this way. Here's how you do it. Here's a link. Just do it this way, please. And I always tell artists or producers or whoever, like, look, if the effects that you have on your instrumentation in Logic are the sound, and you want to keep
Uh-oh.
the sound, leave it. If in fact they're just you put a lot of reverb on the vocal because it sounded better to you in your headphones, get rid of it, please. Any of your EQ, please make it go away. Unless, of course, it's the sound. Like guitar tones or whatever, people are very persnickety about for good reason. But, you know, a lot of times having to go through these things and you're like, what is that hissy bit? What is that? Why does it, what's that? Huh? You know,
Or the
and you're trying to
the dirty delay is my least favorite. So like I have a whole video series on the dirty delay, but they send you like their vocal, they put a delay on it, but they didn't take out any of the frequencies in the delay or anything. And so you got these like really harsh, almost like, you know, digital sounding S's that are repeating for eternity and stuff. And so I'm always like, keep your guitar tones, keep your synth sounds, but please, for the love of all that is holy, I need a dry vocal. And if you don't give me that, I will email you back and be like, hey,
I know where you live. Yeah, that, and also delay times being wrong or reverb times being crazy, or hey, I found this really cool dub delay. What do you think? And it's just like the teeny tiniest bit off and it throws everything. That's another favorite. Little things like that can be avoided. You know, it's like, you know what, send me that track bounce, but also send me the dry one and we'll see which one works better. Oh yeah, sure, that sounds fine.
How about you let me do my job as the person that's, you know, finishing your song for you?
You know what, though, being a mix engineer is half and half, right? Because a lot of artists now are self-produced, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. You know, sometimes it's a really great thing because people know exactly what they want and they relay that information to you and you can do your job easily. But some people don't. And, you know, that's where that interpersonal skill comes in of like, okay, why don't you, and references, right? Like references can be all over the place. Usually I tell people, if you can send me a mix reference, not of what inspired this song, but if your album were going to sound like something, could you send me a few references? And the references I get are like, wait a minute, what? You know, like some song that sounds like Pearl Jam, they send me like Run Through the Hills from Iron Maiden. I'm like, this doesn't compute. I'm not quite sure. You know, so you have to do a little bit of interpretation. And if I'm not sure what they mean, I'll ask them, like, is there a reason why you sent me Run Through the Hills when this song sounds like Jeremy? Oh yeah, I just like the space. Okay, so sure. A lot of people think about mixed references as what inspired them as opposed to what they want the end result to sound like. And that sometimes is painful. But I think I always look at it as my job is, as a mix engineer anyway, regardless of who I'm working with, my job is to help them see their vision through. It's to help them realize their dream and their potential. And luckily, I've been able to do that on many occasions, but there are some times where somebody doesn't really know what they want and they don't have the language to interpret. So you have to go through circles of trying to interpret what it is that they want. And I think that's the skill, besides gear and plugins and microphones and whatever. That's the hardest skill, of being able to talk to musicians, being able to talk to, video producers, and really understand what it is that they want. And how to do that without making yourself crazy and without making them crazy. I hate to use a euphemism, but it takes a village. It takes patience, and it takes understanding. And it also means that you leave your ego in the backseat of the car whenever you're about to mix, because it's not about you, it's about them. And
Preach.
You could not be totally down with the artist's vision, but your job is to see that vision through. So even if you don't like a decision that they made, you still have to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
You can argue about it. And I don't want to use the word argue, but say, look, here's the reason why I'm not really excited about this particular decision. Here's why. Do you hear what's happening here? Blah, 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 blah. This is why I feel like we should do it this way. And if the artist comes back and goes, no, I want it this way, your job is to do it the way they're asking you to do it, period. And you do the best that you can with what you've been given and what their vision is. And sometimes you'll get mixed notes back that's like, hey, remember when you said X, Y, and Z? Can we just do that then? I hear what you're saying now. Great. And then you send them your version of it, and then they come back and say, you know what, is there like a halfway point? Sure. Let's figure out what that is. Sometimes Zoom is helpful, in that regard, where you can just talk about something and talk it through and say, here's one option. What do you think about that? And, you can come to a consensus, but I mean, every artist is different. Every situation is different. Every mix is different. And you could get 9 out of 10 mixes absolutely perfect on the first try, but there's always that one song that just does not want to be mixed. It's like, you know what? Screw you and your little dog too. I'm just sitting here. I don't need you.
Hey,
Giorgi.
I think about I had a sabbatical from music, and when I came back to it a few years ago, and I listened to what the sound of everything was, I was extremely upset, because there seemed to have been a lack of what I would call broadcast quality. That when we were working, before everyone had their own little digital machine at home, and their own little computer, there were engineers who were engineers operating equipment that, you had to know what you were doing to run. And no offense to anyone, yeah, I'm a Pro Tools user, and I try to know all the other ones because I work with kids. And God knows what they're using. I mean, they use Audacity. I'm using Pro Tools. I'm like speechless, the things they do with it, because I can't do it, but they can. But when I'm working with an artist, having been a producer and an artist myself, I'm always mindful of me and my big mouth and what I think about anything. But I'm very cautious about what I feel my responsibility is right now, is the broadcast quality. What is being and what is going to be around for years? Because if you take a 1960 record, you could still put it on the radio. But a lot of the stuff I hear, because we don't know who the heck's doing it, please forgive me, it sounds awful. And I work with sound healing, and I don't hear it as being something that's very pleasant to the ears. There's a lot of digital distortion. And so when I'm mixing, I'm really trying to release something with the artist that they had in mind, but also bearing in mind the delivery, CD, the net, wherever it's going. And I think that's where I'm at. And am I passing this on to a mastering engineer versus sometimes an artist just wants me to, strap on a limiter and here we go, we're going to be, -6, -2, whatever it is. So I do use Pro Tools. I, for a while, was into Motu, the digital performer. I found that quite good. But I, in terms of what the artist wants, sometimes they ask for crazy things, but I'm more mindful of, is that something that I think is just noise in terms of broadcast quality and digital, because digital, if you screw around with digital, it's not like analog. People are talking about saturators and all this imaginary thoughts they have about what analog was doing. Well, it was tape. It's not, analog had life. Digital, it's a flat line. It has no life. Digital is just a copy. It's no life to it. So
I agree with you on that one, because when I first started recording, I was using tape, and there was just a certain warmth and quality to it. It's just like trying to explain to people these days the mono sound of old vinyl versus digital music these days. It's just, I don't know. There with you. Tape just had a warmth to it, especially if you had to go back over a section and like tape. I miss the analog sometimes.
I don't
and
miss
I
it at
try
all.
to bring that into what I do. And so my system, I have outboard gear that I'll introduce just to give it something. I don't know what, but maybe I bring in an outboard reverb or a compressor, so I have a very complicated in and out system, and I'm sure you all do. But I'm very mindful of what things sound like, and am I, what is the chain? Am I bringing in distortion into a plugin? Am I paying attention to what I'm bringing in? Am I already starting with distortion? And then, well, when it comes out, it looks good, doesn't look distorted, but really it is distorted coming in. So if there are people out there listening, if whatever DAW you use, be mindful of your signal and where are you starting, and that you're bringing in a clean signal that you love. And if as we all do, we work with sounds and mixing, we're mixing things that people give us that they did at their house, and God only knows what kind of shielding they had on anything, probably none. There's, I see that room I have, that's my dining room. I turn that into a drum booth. I put up this, I do this. It's my drum room. It's a great drum room. Mamma mia, it's awesome. 4 mics. I don't go crazy. And it works for me. So, but I'm always mindful that I'm not bringing in noise, because no matter what, you could have analog and you could have digital. It won't matter if your signal isn't good.
Well, it's interesting because go ahead, Denise.
I was going to say the one thing that I do not miss from analog days is in tracking sessions, you had everything up on the board and everything sounded great, and you were super proud of what everything sounds like. And then when people came into the room, you hit play and you were playing off tape and you were like, is it going to sound the same? Because it always came back like a little bit, not as much high-end frequencies, so it always came back a little bit not so bright. which in some cases worked well depending on what it is you were recording, but it was the input was always different from the playback. And you had to be cognizant of how hot you hit the tape. You had to be cognizant of where the instruments were on the tape. As a matter of fact, I was so traumatized by one engineer I assisted with that I still, even in Pro Tools, have hi-hat as track one, because he basically laid in to me. Back in the day, like in the 90s, we did a lot of hip hop, and all the hip hop engineers put kick on track one, right? Which was technically a no-no when it came to tape, because you wouldn't put anything with low end information or anything that was important on an edge track, because the edges were the ones that got messed up first. Little things from the old days that we don't remember. I still to this day put hat on track one still, because I was traumatized by this guy laying into me for like 20 minutes. I can't believe you did that. Why would you do that? Why do you have a kick on track one? Who the hell does that? Like everybody except you, buddy. But that was because back in the day, hip hop was king, and that's what they did. Kick would always go first on track one. Why? I don't know.
I think
but
we were
those
doing that before. I mean, I have sheets of tracks that come from some major studios, and it's kick,
yes,
and or hat or overs.
Yep.
And
look, that guy laid into me so hard that I'm 53. I was maybe like 27 at the time, and he just, I don't remember his name. I remember he had like Bob Ross hair. He was not nice, but man, he laid into me so harshly that to this day, even in Pro Tools, hat track one.
well,
You know, it just
we're gonna
traumatized.
say you're awesome.
Well, thank you. But you know, it's these types of things, though. They're, like I said, we have audio purists in our midst who would absolutely lose their minds if they saw certain mic techniques or whatever. There are certain purists who, you know, oh, you can only use this microphone for male vocals. You can only use this mic. This is the only microphone I use. Oh, you don't have this plug-in. You can't even be a real studio. If you don't use Pro Tools, you're not a real engineer. You know, you've got those people. And I mean, whatever, they're entitled to their opinion, and maybe they have enough Grammys on their wall or their shelf that they're entitled to that opinion. And, you know, I've seen so many times just people acting like fools, trying to justify why they do things the way they do them. It works for them. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You know what I mean? It's there's no, like, yes, there are rights and wrongs, right? Yes, there's a right way to record a hi-hat. There's a wrong way to record a hi-hat. But at the end of the day, 90% of your sound comes from the drummer and the kit. And you have to make choices based on what you've been given. If you have a hi-hat basher, there's nothing you can do to make sure that that hi-hat isn't in every single mic, including the kick drum. You know, that's a playing issue. No microphone is going to fix that. So you can find choices that maybe will alleviate it to a degree without slicing your head in half with a hi-hat. But at the end of the day, that's why you have so many microphones in your cabinet, to alleviate those problems that can come up. But I've always felt 80%, 90% of your sound is the musician, as well as the instrument that they're using. And, you know, again, our job is to make their lives easy and make it listenable. That's it. That's my phone, by the way.
Well, it's kind of funny because from the last question we had into digital and analog, we kind of like went into that question because we just covered all that stuff, because that was the next question and you guys did all that stuff. So thank you for that one. So let's go to the next question. Okay, so we kind of did this too. Well, maybe. So what is your process of mixing songs from artists to start to finish? What's your process of that?
I guess it just really depends. I mean, that's a really hard question. Because every vocalist is different, every drummer is different, every guitar player. What are you talking about? Metal, pop, Christian contemporary, hip hop. There's a different system for all of it. And I would say that the best practice is to find a workflow that works really well for you and kind of go in that direction. For example, something I tend to do, like Denise was saying, put the hi-hat on track one. We all have our habits, but what I do is I start mixing the drums first, and then I mix everything else in context. I'm not muting the drums so I can mix the bass. No, I get the drums where I want, then I turn on the bass, then I turn on the guitar, and I turn on the piano. I usually do vocals last. It's something that I do that not a lot of people do. They kind of disagree with me. Is I mix the whole song to get it sounding good, and then I go back and I do automation at the end. I decide where I'm going to have, things kind of come up. The vocal's going to come up here. I just get a really well balanced sound, and then I do my automation at the end. There's like Denise was saying, there's the right way. I'm putting in quotes. I like to call those there's best practices for certain things. But one of the things I say all the time, and I'm also an educator. I teach audio for Beat Kitchen School and a few other places. There's no rules here, find what works best for you, take from your mentors, watch tutorials. But at the end of the day, your job is to make the client and the artist love their song. And however you need to do that, however gets you there, whatever works best for you, whatever workflow best fits you, that's the best way to do it. So yeah, that's a tough generalized question, but I hope that I answered it okay for you.
I'll throw in that I do the exact opposite.
See?
If I'm working with, I also do a lot of musical theater, so it's a different head, but I always start with the vocals, always. Because I want to get the space and the shape of the song and getting the vocals so that it's here and just lovely and beautiful and is the focus of my attention. And then I'll bring in the kick drum and the bass, because that's usually, those are the two places, the two instruments that make especially female vocals start doing this, So then I sculpt the kick drum and the bass so that my lead vocal is still big and beautiful. And then I'll bring in the rest of the kit and, sculpt a little bit more, get rid of that, get guitars, like loud guitars and female vocals are always difficult because they sit in the same frequency range. How do you get your guitars to sound huge and still maintain the lead vocal as big and your focus of attention? So I'll do that. And then I put them all together. Okay, we're somewhere. And then I start doing the automation and sculpting a little bit more, moving things to the sides, getting my whole
Getting all up in that stereo field.
Getting all up in that stereo field, girl. That's what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get them guitars out to the sides. But my goal is always, I do have a pet peeve, is that mastering engineers these days have a tendency to place the lead vocal somewhere on the top part of your sinuses. And then the kick drum is somewhere in your nostrils. And I don't enjoy that.
No.
That's not my thing, but I do want the vocal to be front and center, and I do want that voice to be clear as a bell. So how do you do that? 9 times out of 10, what makes especially female vocalists start sounding like this is that you have other things competing. And that's why I started with the lead vocal, to get my shape, to get my reverbs right, to really make everything that they do, especially spitty S's, make me insane. So that's one of the things. You can sculpt your reverb to make those S's and things not so painful, So I'm always worried. I'll spend a half an hour to an hour just trying to get my reverb right, whether it be, whatever kind of reverb it is. I want the vocal to just sit and wow me. That's what I want. I want that vocal to be super clear and crystal clear. Like I'm right there. And the reverb makes such a difference. And I think that's one of those things, again, we talk about microphones and plugins and all these other things. Reverbs done well, delays done well, to a point where the vocal just, like, it's just there. And it's just, hey, how you doing, girl? I'm here singing you a song. That sometimes it's difficult based on how it was captured. Sometimes people really want, I had one artist who likes this spitty, crazy reverb that's like splashing all over the place, and it made me crazy, but that's what she wanted. So that's what she got. And to this day, I don't want to listen to the album because it makes me nuts. But she loves it, and that's all that matters. Again, it's not about me, right? It's about her, and she loves it, and that's all that matters. I'm also a big shoegaze fan, so I love shoegazy. Everything's like in a tunnel someplace. I love that too, but it all has its place. If I treated a musical theater album like a shoegaze album, I'd be fired. It would be better to listen to, but you know, and every genre has its isms. Every genre has its tastes. And, you know, back in the 90s, there was this whole thing about specializing. You had to specialize in a genre. I never liked that idea because I'm like, well, what happens when that genre is no longer popular? Then what do you do? Everybody knows you as a hip hop mixer. So when hip hop dies, what happens? You know, and having been in the business as long as I have, I've seen the roller coaster of different engineers that I came up with, whether I was their assistant or whether they came up as assistants with me. The folks who were able to diversify their skill sets are the ones that are still working. You know, the ones who were able to mix or record cross genre are the ones who are still working. So I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of our job is being curious. Be curious about what other people are doing. Be curious about different genres. You don't have to like it necessarily. You don't have to love, say, country music to mix country music, but you should at least have the ear for it and do a little research. You know, I don't have to love hardcore punk, but I can do it, you know, and I have to listen to that genre and I have to listen to what else is going on so that we have a reference point, you know, and that's, again, the art of the job that we do. There's the skill and then there's the art of it. And how those two diverge is what makes our lives interesting from day to day.
Allie, you want to say something about your recordings from start to finish? Well, you're muted.
Sorry, my Zoom was acting silly. I think my internet just decided to glitch at the worst time ever. But so yeah, I have a smaller studio, and so I have the advantage most of the time when it comes to recording, usually bands, to have that process from beginning to end. And Shels witnessed this. We'll leave the band nameless. It actually wasn't my band that did it. Came in to record, and I kept trying to tell them, no, this is what I want you to do. Here's your metronome, because that's going to make everybody's life easier in the end. Let's do a scratch track of all of you guys together so that we can get a feel. And then we're going to go back over everything and we'll track everything. If you don't like the scratch track drums, we can redo the drums, or we can leave the scratch track drums and build off of there. And they always think they have a better idea of how to do it. Drives me nuts. But at the end of the day, you got to take in some of that with your knowledge. And like you guys are saying, it's their product when they're finished. You're just trying to help them make it sound good. And as difficult as it can be, Stupid thing. Sorry, I told you my internet's being glitchy. As difficult as it can be, some artists can be. We start with the scratch track, get the drum sound right usually, and then build everything off of there. But I don't know if you guys have noticed it when you get something to mix and master it. Lately, when I get tracks from people that are just bouncing it back to me and I'm mixing it for them, what is that weird cross frequency thing in the kick drum that sounds like it's clicking, but it drives me bonkers. It literally makes the kick drum sound like it's clicking, and it takes forever to get it out. And they say, "Oh, I don't hear that. I don't hear that." But
So did they use quarters?
probably
There's an old trick. There's an old trick where you put a quarter on the beater and you put a quarter on the front head of the kick drum so that you get that.
Yeah,
Some
you know the
people still
sound I'm
do it.
talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But some people do that purposely. Or they're using probably a D6, or they're using some other kind of microphone that has a bump around 4K to give it the attack of the drum. Or they're just, probably compressing the bejesus out of it because they don't know any better. But there's that too. And, I get it. That's what EQ is made for.
Right. But
If God
I've
didn't
had
want us to use EQ, he wouldn't have made it.
well, like lately I've had the fun part of learning to do the process from beginning to end myself, where I've always worked with a team in the past. There's been 3 or 4 of us where each of us are working on a certain thing. Like when I first started doing the audio side, I was more just the engineer. I set up the microphones, I set up the amplifiers, I plugged the stuff in. I might be the guy that hits go on the computer, but that was about where I started. And now I'm to the point where I can go from a song, the beginning of the song, to the finished product, which is nice because like I said, it used to be like 3 or 4 of us and we'd all bounce ideas off of each other. The old car speaker test, listen to it in your headphones, listen to it in your monitors, listen to it on car speakers, listen to it over a PA, different environments to make sure you're not missing something, bringing in other ears. But I've been having a lot of fun lately just letting bands play as a whole. Like basically they're hearing the whole product in their head on headphones. But to them, it feels like they're playing live because they're all standing in the room and playing off of each other, which even though we've digitalized that these days with the pods that you plug everything into and interfaces and stuff, I learned it's kind of an old school trick more than a new school trick. Like back in the analog days, they would isolate the vocalist, but then everybody else was in the room playing. But yeah, I'm always into new ideas and different ways of learning stuff. I've used Reaper. I've used Pro Tools. I learned Pro Tools actually at the Seattle Art Institute when my band was invited to go do our demo there. And they showed us the whole process. They didn't just bring us in to record. Like they showed us, hey, this is what here's the board. This is what's going into where. This is why we're doing this. Let's try this. They wanted a professional band basically to help the students through their finals basically and explaining everything. And that was really cool for me to see that whole process. And it helps me in the home studio with these bands. And then with COVID, everybody started doing everything at home. So I get a lot more tracks sent to me than actually making them now. So I might have to bounce some of those ideas off of you guys on how to make that a little easier. Because sometimes it's a headache. You get this thing with a filter and you're like, what on earth am I supposed to do with that? Or like, did you record that in a coffee cup? Like what? I don't understand. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm still working on my patience with that for sure.
Kick drums that sound like they were recorded inside a basketball. That's what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah. A flat basketball to boot.
Yep. They're like, I think also
home recording. Home recording is my bread and butter. And if you heard, I never play it because I love my artists. I love my clients. They usually become my friends. But if you heard some of the before and after stuff that I worked on, you might be a little blown away. But my specialty, what pays my bill, put food on my table, is people recording in their bedrooms. And I just get all kinds of stuff. And I just really learned how to make it sound good. Like one of the things I say in my slogan or whatever is I can mix any song, record it anywhere. Because that's kind of how I started, was really low budget clients, and I had really low budget gear, and I had them come over, and I was working for pennies trying to learn. And so I didn't get the opportunity to learn in a fancy place with fancy stuff. And it's really helped me now that everybody's kind of home studio now. I feel like I kind of got an advantage because of the way that I learned. And so, Allie, I think you have an advantage the same way. You know, you're learning on in these different environments with these bands that might be more difficult, or sending you tracks that are a little more difficult. In like a year or two, like you're going to be, you know, like, oh yeah, I can mix any song, record it anywhere. Trust me, you know, that's going to be your thing too. And that's the beauty of kind of cutting your teeth in a non, you know, I got into Berkeley. I didn't go. I didn't have the money to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you know, I read at high school, and the thing that I'm happy about is that if I had gone to Berkeley, it would have been on drumming, and I would be a Berkeley drummer. But what
And
I was like, what job do I get?
You'd probably still be paying your student loans.
Yeah.
As Lord
And I
knows,
wouldn't have
had
known
many
that I
years of
wanted
that.
to be an audio engineer, which would have been so cool. I might have gone if I thought if I knew then what I knew now, you know, or whatever. But
Isn't hindsight fun?
yeah. Anytime, Allie, you have a question, you want a feedback, whatever, just hit me up. I'd love to hear your songs. I would.
I'll have to send you guys some of the stuff that we've made in this room. It's pretty okay. That's what I tell my friends.
Nice.
I'm sure it's better than that.
Where I live, my whole house is a studio. I live alone, and I'm like, you know what? I don't care who likes it, who doesn't like it. The whole house, from the moment you come in, every room can be used. You ask about recording and mixing. I'm old school. You know, I work with young people. They come in and they're like, well, my drummer is going to come in first. And then, well, the singer will come in another day. And I'm like, the hell, you know, how professional are these people? You know, are you Bernard Purdy? I don't know. But, and so it can work, but most of the time it's a disaster. And, you know, I let them have their little disaster. And then I say, okay, how much, you know, I asked you 3 weeks ago, how much money do you have? If you have 5 cents, then I just need to know that, because I will make it sound like a record, no matter how much money you have, because that's the only mindset those of us who have made records have. As a, you know, that's what we hear. We hear a record. So, you know, I work with them the way they can work, but then I bring them slowly into the world of, you know, if you all played at one time, it might go faster and sound better. Want to try it? So I work with bands, individual artists. Mostly, I only come out of the woodwork now if I'm really in love with it, because I'm older and it's hard, and I have so much uptime. I have to really manage it. So I you know, my favorite client, he's 78 years old, and we're doing a country rock album, you know. So, and he's awesome. So my recording process is very, I have a basic way of doing it, and I do try to go with the client, but when they're struggling, then I bring them around, because they're not going to be able to afford it otherwise. They're going to go over the $5 budget they had. It's the same thing with mixing. Most of us are mixing today by not the hour. It's some people are doing tracks or the type, and there's a fee. And I've heard $100, and I've heard, you know, 10,000. Who are you? How good are you? Will determine the cost. Again, I only work with, usually I'm working with kids right now, you know, and I'm talking a high school, college. My mixing, I tend to be more like when I was in a studio. And so when you put the tape up, you just put all the faders up. You put the faders up and you heard everything at once. Most of the time, it is maybe I didn't record it, so I have a reference and I get to hear the reference. And then when I put up that song and I hear it, I think, well, just without anything, what is it? How far away from the reference is it? And so I start to just sort of carve things out and make space around that vocal. Like you say, that the vocal, you want space around it. I work a lot with psychoacoustics and forward space, forward back, and the depth. I love space for sounds. I'm more inclined to probably at some point I want to listen to the tracks and just if I start to hear noise, because as we've all said, we're getting these tracks from people who aren't in studios. So you may have, I've heard people talking. Oh, I had dogs barking, and I was like, it was so loud. I thought, is this part of the song? Maybe it is. And I'm back to the reference and I'm thinking, it's not quite. But there was dogs barking, like unbelievable. So my process is just putting up the tracks and listening to it and carving out a space and seeing how close I can get to their vision, whatever it might be. I do have limits. There is some music I will not work. If it's going to be misogynistic and kill everybody, I'm out. You got to go somewhere else. I can't. Maybe in my younger day, but not anymore. I've worked with artists that, with that certain sound they use, and they pass out. They literally hyperventilate while they're singing. I don't want to revive anyone anymore. So there are some things I don't do. I think when you're younger, you do. You revive a kid off the floor. It's nothing. Now I'm thinking, I could get sued. I own a house. Maybe I don't want this responsibility. But I'm selfish at the moment, and I'm probably working more with my own tracks. That being said, I am thinking, geez, I wonder what they all charge. Maybe I should give them a song and see what everybody does with what I'm working on. It might be better than what I'm doing, which I would love. So at any rate, that's my little summation.
All right. Anybody else wants to finish that question? We're all good? All right. So we can probably go on when another hour or so. So we're going to change. Yeah, we've been going on for a while. I just realized, oh my goodness. So what I'm going to do is that because I have like more questions to ask you, like there's 20 questions on this sheet I can go through. But what I want to do is change gears for a second. And because I want to know how you guys got your names for your studio. Because we kind of like I fudged that thing at the beginning of the show. So I want to take the time and then ask you, how did you guys come up with your guys' studio's name? So Jam, since I messed yours one earlier, you go first.
Okay. I don't know if I can hang out for another hour.
Yeah, that's why we're winding this down.
Okay. Yeah, so Dank Studios. Dank is actually my mother-in-law's maiden name. And so her parents were the Danks. And I just really wanted to dedicate the studio to them and everything that they did to like bring her to the country, which also brought my wife here into this world. And my mother-in-law is the most amazing, supportive, wonderful person. And without her, this studio wouldn't be possible. So I decided to name it after her. It's also German for think. So it's like think. So I thought that was really cool. And that's how I got my studio name. It's pretty simple.
Right. All right. Denise, how did you get your studio name?
It was my Wi-Fi password. So I thought, I mean, it's become a more convoluted thing at this point, but like it started as a Wi-Fi password, just Mona Lisa. I thought that was cute. Mono stereo, da da da. And I found this whole crop of pop art inspired by the Mona Lisa. And it got me thinking, like, the Mona Lisa is something that is it's something that's put on a pedestal that you can't change it, that it's immutable, it's perfection, it's this, that, and the other thing. And yet all of these different artists have taken it and turned the Mona Lisa or the into like a cat, or put Mr. Bean's face on her face, just crazy stuff. And I thought, well, isn't that exactly what a studio should be? Rather than saying, well, it should be like this, why not ask, what could it be, as opposed to what it should be? And think more on the line of, yes, this was your original idea, and now we've moved forward to this other place because you've, done different things. Why does it have to still be exactly as your first inspiration? Why can't it be something else? And constantly having that question of what could be as opposed to what should be is something that I try to I try to bring that up as much as possible. Obviously, something like a theater production, the ink is the ink. You do what's written. But when it comes to singer-songwriters and other artists, there's always that give and take of what could be and what should be. What did they originally hear? And now that we've had a band in and we have all these overdubs, what could it be now? So that's kind of what has shaped the name. And plus I found a really cool pop art where she was only wearing one earbud, and I was like, there it is. Cool. Mona Lisa.
Rock on. All right, Miss Allie, how did you come with yours?
Okay, so my studio is called the Kennel Studios. And how that came to be is that the studio originally belonged to Law Dog Music, which was a booking, production, podcasting company for many years here in the Pacific Northwest. And the CEO of that company, he named the studio the Kennel. So it's been the Kennel Studios ever since, now that it's Basement Roots exclusive. Oh, you didn't know that, Shels. It's Basement Roots exclusive. There is no Law Dog Music in this house, at least not this room anymore. It's all Basement Roots. It's all mine now, but I don't know if I'll rename it or not. It's just called The Kennel because it's kind of the hangout space where it started out as the band jam area, and then it evolved into recording studio. There's a pool table in here for when guys just want to hang out. We got couches, zillion guitars, drum kit. There's a TV out here now too. I mean, it's just evolved into an all-around place for musicians to hang out or record their music if they want to. And I mean, where do you take your dog when he needs to hang out with other dogs? He goes to a big old kennel, right? So I guess I haven't changed the name and probably won't because of that. So that's how I got the name. It was originally Law Dog Music Studio, and it was pre-named The Kennel, and it just stuck, and I kept it. Everybody calls it that, so we keep it.
Cool. Now, after Giorgi explains her studio, I got one last question, and we'll be out of here. Okay, so Miss Giorgi, what did you get your studio name?
I had many names for my studio. And I live on a private road. Okay, and I've been here 30 years, so I could name my studio 100 names. Well, now I had to come up with a name. So as time goes on, the road sort of forked off. And now when people would want to know how to get to my house, I could picture a radio announcer saying, "The top of the hill, come anytime and record." And so that's what it's called, Top of the Hill.
Nice. Rock on. All right. All right. So here's the last question. We want to try to inspire new young women engineers, because there's only 7% of engineers that are women. So how do you want to inspire new generations coming out in the world, or maybe they want to dab into it? What do you want to say to them?
I guess I could do this one short, quick, to the point, because it applies to mostly everything I do, from drumming to working on cars to being a sound engineer. I take it back to a mentor of mine back in the day when he said, I don't care if you are a man, woman, boy, girl, or a German shepherd, as long as you can do your job and do it well. You can do it just as good as the guys can. Even if we do it differently, it's still good. And don't let anybody tell you you can't. And if they say you can't, then buck up, buttercup, go do it, and do it to the best of your ability and be you.
All right.
I got nothing to add to that. That's perfect.
Yeah, I would say, like, just if you want to do something, you can do it. And especially now, there's so much accessibility when it comes to audio. You can get a DAW and a microphone and an interface for a reasonable price, and you can just try it and see if you like it. And there are a lot of really amazing communities that are more accepting. So if you are feeling discouraged, stay away from places like, what is it? It used to have a different name, but gear space or whatever it's called. Stay away from those really male dominant gearhead type of environments. Go join Sound Girls. Go join Women in Audio. You're always welcome at Beat Kitchen School. Find places where you can find your community of encouraging people, and don't read the comments on social media. Just don't read the comments, and you'll find that there is more encouragement out there for you. Also, surround yourself with women who are better than you at this. Get some mentorships and find your community, and the road will be much easier for you than battling against those old dinosaurs that are dying out, and they're just trying to hang on to they're keeping their gait as hard as possible because they know that the giant studio is dying, that you have to use this microphone for everything is dying out. And just know that you can be a pioneer in this industry and you can do it on your own terms.
Miss Giorgi?
I can see where the challenges for this generation are much different than mine. And although I was in it probably a very patriarchal world in the sense of, my mother and a lot of mothers were still staying home. They weren't having jobs. That being said, I feel for me, I have more problems now than I did 20, 30 years ago. And so I think part of that is that the industry itself has more people going to school for it. So there's not just competition for females, but the industry itself has a lot of people trying to get in. And many of our younger crowd, women in particular, what I would say is you need to think about what other skills you have and how you can use them to get into a studio, or to find someone like Jam or Denise or myself or Ali to give you a little mentoring. And so maybe you need to do some research on that. And even if you contact us and we said, okay, well, we'll talk to you on Zoom or something, or maybe we would allow you to be a shadow for a Zoom call and maybe watch us work. I don't know, but you've got to really think out of the box, because it's much different. The studios are owned by the operator. We're owned and operated by that person. So and if you're going to go to school for it, The schools can only do so much to get you a job. So I agree, like GM said, get yourself a DAW, however you can. Just get a cheap little, what is it, Scarlett, 2-channel and Reaper. It's a great program. I'm not great at it, but I know it works great. There are people who are far better at it, like Jam. So it's all possible, but we really do have to stick together and encourage one another, and not be afraid to say, geez, you're great. You're a woman and you are awesome. I love what you do. And put ourselves out there and not be like, there's too many women out here and I got to keep my spot. Well, and I'll be honest with you, most of my best friends are men. The men in the industry that I have as friends have been far more receptive. I have been in these groups, and I don't mean to say this, but I have been in these groups and I have been in these discussions, and they have asked for mentors, and I have said, here I am. And do you know how many of them reached out to me? Because there's another little stickler that I want you all to think about now while you're much younger than me. Ageism. Because if you're an 85-year-old male with the beard coming all out of your head and your ass and wherever else, we're going to respect you. But a woman who's 80 and she's had 100 million operations, we're not listening to her, even though she looks good. So there is ageism in this industry, and we need to stop respecting each other, no matter how old we are, whether we're 18, 15, 12. If you're 5 years old and you like screwdrivers, you could end up like us sitting here. So anyway, I want to thank Shel, if I don't get the chance, and all of you, just to have been in your company and had a time to hear what you're all up to and doing.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for all of you guys for coming on to the show. This has been very education. I even go back to me going to college and all this stuff, to hearing all this stuff, and Allie's teaching and Angie's teaching. So this has been such an amazing conversation to talking to all you guys. So thank you so much for coming onto the show. I hope we can keep on supporting each other.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.
It's great meeting you all.
Thank
you guys.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About the Music. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Remember, the show is more than just a podcast. It's a multimedia experience. You can enjoy the content as a blog, a both audio and visual format, or stay tuned to connect with other conversation. If you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that subscribe button. As that way you'll never miss an episode. Also, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for our latest update and exclusive content. Until next time, grab your headphones or tune in visually, and let's keep that music journey together. Let's talk music, because the music is everywhere.